Hello YouTube Pipers, it's Double O Pipe here, aka Rick, and after watching Smarty Bob I'm gonna try his gravity method. I am trying something different, Sutliff's J4 Burley, just to say I tried something different. Now some of these bits are almost like twigs. Alright, let's see if I can keep this lit. We'll give it a shot. And this is my Savinelli Roma 673. We have a storm off the coast. I'm trying to think what they're calling it. Can't remember now. I could look it up probably, but hang on. Well, I could look it up if I knew where my phone was. Oh, okay. Hang on. We're having trouble. Trying to see if I can taste anything different. There's no aromatic. I don't taste anything they could call a topping. So if this is straight burley, that must be what burley tastes like. And I guess I have to smoke it a few times to get that taste ingrained in my head. It's not an unpleasant taste. Well, I was sitting here thinking about this is Friday, the end of the week. Next week will be the end of September. Which brings October into view. Which means Christmas will be here before, like that. So that means I'll have another winter. Don't know how many more I'll have, so I like winter. I like the cold weather. When I was born, my mother had me at a nursing home, and she said we were snowed in at the nursing home. So perhaps that's why I like cold weather. Who knows? But anyway, I began to think about time passing. My son's birthday comes up in October, and he'll be 49. It's hard to believe. I know he can't believe it, but 49. And I have a daughter who is 4 years behind him, so she'll be 45. Don't tell her I said that. Women are notorious for not liking their age known. That might be force of habit because it wasn't going out. But with the passing of another month, the passing of another week, passing of another month, and the passing of another year shortly to come up, I started thinking about, pardon me, the passing of things in life that leave and something else fills that. And I think it was 1951, because it was before I started school. I was around 5 when Dad held the door open, and in came 2 men from a truck carrying in a big box. That box was made out of wood, dark wood, and when they set it down, because Dad told him where to put it, where he wanted it, and said, "You guys be careful with that now. That's a nice piece of furniture." And they put it in front of a window. And he looked at him and said, "Thank you, fellas." And they walked outside and got into their truck, and on the side it said Morris Sokol Furniture. Because he had visited that store the week before, and they said they would deliver it on this particular day. And we just kind of stood there and looked at it. And it was this wooden box sitting in front of us. And it had a window in the front. And down below the window, there was a big round plastic dial on the right and on the left. I said, "Well, what does it do?" Dad said, "Well, we got to plug it in." They told me I got to plug it in. So he walked behind it, and I said, "Watch out for that thing in the back." There was this protruding, like almost a cone, except it flattened out at the end. And that was the tube that was in there, the television. Big glass bulb with a bulbous end that stuck out. And Dad said, "Okay, I'll watch it." and he stuck the prongs into the wall socket. Now I was standing in front and I said, "It's not doing anything." He said, "Well, I got to turn this knob here." And he clicked it on. And we stood there and watched. I said, "Nothing's happening." He said, "Give it a minute, it's got to warm up, a couple of 3 minutes." So we stood there watching this. It was like, I'm trying to think what the color was. There was a piece of plate glass in front of the bulbous screen that was in there, and that screen was a green. It was a gray green, almost a olive green, but it wasn't quite that dark. And we stood there for several minutes, and I said, "Well, nothing's happening, Daddy. What's going on?" And he said, "Well," he said, "it's got to heat up. I mean, it's got to warm up." Finally, the screen lit up with squiggly lines going diagonally. And I said, "Well, that's what good is that?" And Dad said, "Well, the man at the store showed me what to do." And he got down on his knee, and there was a rectangular flat door that he flipped down, and inside there were some just little things poking out like this, little black rods sticking out, little tiny things. And he said, "I have to turn these." One said vertical, one said horizontal, one said not brightness, sharpness, and the other one, I can't remember what the other one was. I think it was the brightness. But anyway, he started messing with the first one, and the diagonal lines came up and flicked like this. And it was just like, you've seen it, it's like snow on the screen. And I said, "Well, there's nothing there." And he said, "Well, we've got to go over to this right-hand dial and click it until we find the station." So he clicked around until he got to 5, and it clicked on to 5, and a man was kind of sitting there diagonally talking, his face kind of wavering. And he said, "Well, we got a face and we got somebody talking." I don't think that's my favorite way to do anything. I'm going to have to pack it like I've been packing it. But anyway, the man was talking, don't know what he was talking about, just fascinated by the fact that there was a picture on this screen. And he fiddled with the dials until he got it pretty steady. And then he did the third one, and he got the fuzziness out of it came pretty sharp. And then he went from a grayish picture to a sharper black and white. And we stood back and we watched. And the man talked. Don't know what he was saying. But we had a picture and we had sound. And we were just excited about that. And my mother was in the kitchen fixing supper. And she said, "What you got there?" I said, "A television." She said, "How does it look?" I said, "There's some man talking on there." So she came in wiping her hands on her dish towel and stood there with us, and the three of us just stood there and watched. Then Dad sort of looked around and said, "We're going to need some chairs to sit in to watch this." So we kind of gathered some chairs around. Sat down and watched the man talking. Still didn't know what he was saying. It was something that I wasn't really interested in, other than the fact that here in our front room was this. I think Dad said it was a 21-inch screen. Maybe it was 17-inch. I don't know. Whatever size it was, it wasn't very big. But it was sitting there, and it had somebody from somewhere in front of us talking to us, and we could hear him and we could see him, and we couldn't talk back. But it was just amazing to us that out of nowhere we got this picture, because we had always seen on TV we'd always seen in magazines where whoever had a television, they had an antenna outside on the house. Well, we didn't have an antenna. So we sat down, all three of us, and watched that man talking for a bit. And Mom said, "Well, I better go finish getting supper together." And I looked at it, and it said Admiral. It was an Admiral. That was the maker of this television set. Which made me think to look back in the corner, because those chairs that we were sitting at looking at this new screen, we used to have in front of the radio, which was a Philco. And we used to watch the dial on that, which had a golden glow when we ran it up through the stations. And we had a lot of stations we could pick through. Well, as Mom went into the kitchen, she reached over and turned the radio off. And I watched that golden glow of the dial just fade away. And then I turned back to the TV and watched that, and I said, "Daddy, can I go tell next door about our TV?" And he said, "Sure, go ahead." So I ran next door to where my cousins lived. And I said, "We got a TV." They looked at me and said, "What's it like?" I said, "You just plug it in." They said, "No, we don't believe that." I said, "Yeah, we don't have an antenna or anything." Now, I forgot to mention that my dad said probably the reception would be better if we had some rabbit ears. So I was sitting there thinking, we're going to get a rabbit and sit him on top of the TV, and how's he going to stay there? And he said, "I know what you're thinking. No, it's not like that. It's a little thing that you put on top that holds two metal sticks that you get better reception with it as you play with the direction of those metal sticks." I said, "Oh, okay." So anyway, my cousin said, "That's not possible. You got to have one of those things that goes up into the sky. It's made out of metal and has all these spikes on top." I said, "Nope. All we did was plug it in, and we got a picture, and we got sound, and we got a TV." Well, I'll tell you, Smarty Bob, I'm not crazy about your method, because I didn't get a whole lot of tobacco in there. So anyway, I said, "No, you need to come over and look." And they said, "Well, we can't come over right now. We eating supper." I said, "Well, when you get through with supper, come on over, because you need to see this." I said, "We got a picture and we got sound without an antenna. You just plug it into the wall." That's what fascinated all of us. We all thought you had to have this thing up on the house, but nope, it just plugs in the wall. I'm gonna put some Captain Black Royal in my Savinelli Bing's favorite. I don't put it in the way I normally do, even though I have to keep lighting it. But I was doing the same thing there with that. And I just love the smell of this stuff. At any rate, I went running back home and told Dad that I had let them know about the TV and they were going to come over after they ate supper. And he said, okay. And he looked at Mom and he said, what you think, dear? And she said, interesting. And he said, yeah, isn't that a nice piece of furniture, though? He had said that about the Philco a couple of years before, because the Philco radio went from the floor to halfway. I mean, it was about as tall as I was. And we had had that for several years, and that was our center of entertainment. But with the TV, the poor old Philco was forgotten. And not too long after that, Dad hauled it out. And it was gone. And all those years that we had watched the radio, we're now going to be focused on this box with a window. It wasn't long after we got that the Mickey Mouse Club came on, and we had Channel 5, just one station, signed on at 6 in the morning, signed off at 11 o'clock at night, with the Star Spangled Banner, I might add. And it came on about an hour prior to when they began to broadcast, with this round circle with lines and stuff with an Indian's face in the middle, called a test pattern. Because pretty much every time you turned it on, you had to play with the vertical, the horizontal, the sharpness, and all that to get your picture back. I don't know what happened during the night, but the picture wasn't straight the next day like it was the night before. And Dad always had to mess with those buttons in order to get the picture to come back. But the whole purpose of what I was getting at about this was how this newfangled contraption, which was another nice piece of furniture, took the place of what had been our nice piece of furniture and entertainment. I've begun to listen to those old radio shows again, because you can pick them up through podcasts. And right now I've been listening to Frontier Gentleman, Frontier Gentleman, about an Englishman who wrote for the London Times and was in America, traveling across through the West, writing pieces back home to let people know what the American West was like firsthand. He carried a gun and was handy with it if he had to use it, but he didn't like it. And the Frontier Gentleman was played by John Daner, who played Paladin on the radio show Have Gun Will Travel, and several other people. He was a well-known radio actor. He had some guest shots on some of the TV shows back then too. Yeah, like I said, winter's coming. The cold end of the year. To turn around into a new year on New Year's, where we go through all the cycles again. And with each day, we have begun to set aside things that were important to us and focusing on new things that have become important to us. And I'll be honest with you, I think we've lost a lot. I mean, talking to this is one of those new things. And probably it would be best if I were just outside working in the yard or something. But anyway, this is another winter I have. I enjoy my winters. My birthday's coming up in February, which is what, 5 months away now? And I'll be another year older. We have the fringe winds from that storm off the coast. And there's another storm, I think they're going to name it Ophelia, which is heading this way. It's probably going to turn into a hurricane in the middle of next week. This is the part of the year that is difficult for those of us who live on the coast, the East Coast. Especially in this area, because was it today? No, I think it was yesterday. Yesterday was the anniversary of Hugo that went through here, which altered our thoughts on hurricanes 180. None of us really feared hurricanes like we do now. Because Hugo was so different from all the others we had known as I was growing up. But anyway, so much for me taking up your time, and I seem to get long-winded more and more. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. I hope you found some entertainment value in this. Pardon. I hope you look back on things that gave you pleasure in the past with fond memories, because I do. Take care of yourselves. God bless you until the next time. Bye-bye.